No, it is good. It's good. Okay. Um, Great. Well, everybody, thank you. I see there's some new people coming in for the talk about sobriety. So thanks for everybody who's joining just now. We just finished some epic PvP in World of Warcraft, which was a lot of fun. So session, last session yesterday, I sort of started talking about my journey with alcohol, and more so than just when I started to feel really addicted to it. I started talking about when I started drinking, which was in like late junior high, all the way through high school. And again, it not being too much of a problem because when you're young, it's not um, as much of a problem because you don't have responsibilities. You don't have. It seems like life is infinite when you're that young. I talked about moving out at an early age when I definitely shouldn't have, into multiple different houses that we were just terrible places to live. I'm surprised I lived there. Think looking back at it now, but I'm happy it did because it gives you a lot of perspective when you live in like our house. Just for frame of reference, our house name was the Junkyard. So the lower floor was just covered in garbage, and then the upstairs was kind of where we slept. But it was definitely something. I moved on that, talking about how I moved to Vancouver to go to school for game design, and how in game design school we sort of moved into a house. And the main sort of theme I talked about yesterday was how alcohol. The reason that I found alcohol, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, is alcohol becomes so addicting because you tie it into your status and your personality and your persona. As we start talking about nightclubs today, which is sort of the theme of today's talk, uh, being in a nightclub, being a customer in a nightclub, or being a regular in a nightclub, that's why alcohol is so addicting, because it's a status thing. It's a power thing. And so we talked yesterday about how my first experience with that was throwing big house parties when I was in college, and just having like being the cool guy with the cool house, and having cool parties and having people over all the time and being known as that guy who was like in a band and had an awesome house to like party in. I'm a different man now. After college, we talked about how I was in a band and I got a game design job right out of school. And it, again, when I started playing shows with my band and things like that, and that even more so, like being the cool drummer, I played drums in a band for people, being in front of people, and just having that sort of persona of being. We were in a rock and roll band. Maybe I'll show you guys some pictures of the Broadway Bullies was the name of our band. I'll type it in chat right now, just so if you guys want to do a Google, I'm sure you can find some pictures of us. Try and guess which one is me. I look a little bit different. Yeah, and then out after, there was a point when I started my game design job when my life basically diverged. We got a production deal in Los Angeles, so we went down to LA to start recording a couple albums, and I started bartending at the Granville Warehouse. And again, seeing I was watching over my own talk yesterday to just see how I did and what sort of points I brought up. And the biggest thing was like, that's really where you start seeing going to a bar is cool, and feeling like you're a known person at a bar and you're a regular, and like the staff know you and other people know you, and you can kind of walk in and get whatever seat you want or a free shot. That makes you feel cool. But what really skyrocketed my tying alcohol to being cool was when I started being a bartender and being the person who gave out the booze. Because not only are you giving people booze as a sign of appreciation and connection, you also have to drink with them. And that is kind of the point I would like to start with, is that when you go to a bar and you want to do a shot with the bartender and you think that's I'm just going to skip this ad. When you do a shot with the bartender, and because it's cool, and it makes you feel connected, and it also makes you feel when you're drinking, you feel more comfortable knowing that the other, maybe not in like a fine dining restaurant, but at a bar, like a dive bar or a nightclub, you feel more comfortable getting served by someone who is drinking as well. It's just, you feel like they're more on your level. You can act more normally around them, even if you're super drunk, because they understand because they've had some shots. And that factored a lot into nightclubs. So I got fired from the Granville warehouse. I started working at the Hastings warehouse as well. And that's when I moved into nightclubs. So there's a good friend, Eric, that we started partying with. He worked at a nightclub called Brooklyn. Brooklyn was in Gastown in Vancouver, and he was moving on, and they needed someone to replace him, and they were looking for a really fun person to replace him with. The GM of that nightclub is actually my fiance Sarah's GM now at another restaurant. And so they were looking for someone who was fun and outgoing, and it was a good bartender. And so I said, I want to work here a couple nights a week. And that was the first nightclub I worked at, and it was crazy. The difference between, like, I thought working at a restaurant, like a fun restaurant, was crazy, but working at a crazy nightclub was insane. People come in, and it was a different style of people. The warehouse definitely had a clientele of, it's a cheaper, the food is $5, but the drinks are comparatively priced. But people who come into nightclubs bring thousands of dollars to spend on alcohol. A bottle of vodka is like almost $300 when you can get a bottle of vodka from the liquor store for like $60. But again, it's about that status. And drinking at the warehouse was never okay. Like, we still sneakily did it sometimes, but it was never okay to do it. Whereas at Brooklyn, at nightclubs, you are encouraged to drink with the customers. You're encouraged to get them anything you can do, whether it's how you dress, how you act, or what you like. You're encouraged to get them to spend as much money as possible. Obviously, the over-service limits are a little bit different there. And that's when I really started staying out late. Staying after the club closed, all the people who spend a ton of money there could stay with us. The staff always stayed. We would stay till 6 or 7 in the morning and just drink. And it was always shots. I talked a little bit yesterday about how alcohol, like, once I started getting into hard alcohol, that's really where I noticed a different drunk. And that's sort of when the me that I didn't want to be started coming out. I would say I could definitely drink quite a bit, but I can't handle it properly. And I was the guy at every time we went out, I would fall asleep, or I would pass out just in the middle of everybody. And this had happened even when I was younger. I would just pass out at parties. People would mess with me. They would draw all over me. But it started to happen a lot more frequently when I started working in nightclubs. And it never embarrassed me, because I was like, well, that's just who I am, and I'm not going to stop partying. I'm not going to stop drinking. So I just had kind of like, in a weird way, I was like, oh, I just have to accept that's me. That's who I am. I just have to accept me for me. And so kind of saying it in that altruistic way, which isn't the right way to look at that things. Like, if you're doing something where you are literally like vomiting and passing out in the middle of people, I've passed out on Granville Street. I have passed out in Calgary, out like next to a dumpster, and the cops had to drive me home. Like, that level of badness, but I always just rolled with it, and I was like, well, that's who I am, and I'm not going to stop drinking, and I don't know when to cut it off. I never knew my limit. I never felt like that, because it was always like I would feel so good, and then boom, massive, I would just black out, and then whatever happened, I don't remember what I said. I don't remember what I did. I lost hundreds of different cell phones when they weren't, so expensive. When they're just little flip phones, you could get them a replacement for like $50 or $60, but it's still a lot of money. I lost wallets, I lost passports, all that stuff. It was so bad, and that really started to elevate in nightclubs. There was one year where I was sort of between the warehouse and nightclubs. Every year I go home for Christmas, and Christmas is such an important time for me and my family. We don't really celebrate a lot of other holidays, but Christmas is our biggest one. And one year I went out one night and I lost my ID. Blackout drunk, lost my ID, so I couldn't. It was at the time when I couldn't really get into anywhere without ID. Like, I still wasn't super well known. And so the next night I brought out my passport, and the next night I lost my passport and my cell phone. So I had to tell my mom. She called my work because she couldn't get a hold of me, and was like, "Hey, are you coming home for Christmas? Are you ready to get on the plane tomorrow?" And I had to tell her, I was like, "Look, I lost my ID, I lost my passport, I lost my cell phone. I can't even get on a bus without an ID. Like, I don't have any way to get home, so I can't come home for Christmas." And it was heartbreaking. I broke my mom's heart that day. I broke my heart that day. Like, it was awful. And just looking back now, that if that wasn't a rock bottom, like, who knows what is, right? Like, if you literally got so drunk you can't even see your family at Christmas because you were that drunk, it was awful. And I didn't learn. I spent all of Christmas Day. Christmas Eve, I went out drinking with my good friend who was also a bartender at the warehouse, and we got our feet tattooed. I don't know if I can. I'll see if I can show you guys. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but my feet say dance party. So one foot says dance and the other foot says party. And that's what I did on Christmas Eve. And then the next day I spent at a payphone, back when payphones were a thing, because I didn't have a cell phone, drinking root beer schnapps and calling all my friends and family because I miss them so much. And again, a terrible way to spend Christmas looking back on it. Like, not only did I not learn from that, I drank even more as a result. I drank because I wanted to, and then when I was sad, I drank even more because I was sad. It was awful. Um, and it didn't affect me. I kept going. I just kept drinking. So eventually I moved full time into working at Brooklyn. Or no, sorry, let me back that up. Brooklyn was only open a couple nights a week, but I knew that I wanted to move into nightclubs full time because the money was there. The hours were there. It was like 6 hours a night. I would show up at 10 and I'd be out, I'd finish at 3. Super easy shifts, speed bartending. I think I calculated it working at Republic one day, and on a busy night, you are essentially making 2.5 drinks every minute for 6 hours, or no, sorry, for 5 hours straight. So on average, it works out to about that. Like on a busy Saturday or a busy Sunday night, you're making 2.5 drinks every minute for 5 hours straight, and dealing with people yelling at you and barfing and all of that stuff. So I literally, I was when I was working at Brooklyn, how I got the job at Republic. Um, I was getting pretty cocky as a bartender at Brooklyn because I was doing well. My manager actually encouraged me to nominate, like they nominated me, and they encouraged me to like sign up to get nominated for the Bartender of the Year award at the Vancouver Nightclub Awards, and I won. Um, it was crazy. Again, I went up on stage when I won. I snuck in a flask in a Bible, in a hollowed out Bible, and I chugged it on stage, and then I blacked out, and I don't know what happened. And I actually gave my award to a homeless person, and someone found it and brought it back to me. Um, and I don't have the award anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, so sounds cool. But again, I wish I had those memories. I wish I kept that stuff. Um, so because I was riding on that high and I wanted to work at another nightclub, I messaged the owner of the Donnelly Group, which was Chef Donnelly, and I said I want to work at your bar. It's time for me to start working at your bar. I'm gonna start. And he said, yeah, sure. When can you start? So I started working there. So I was working at Brooklyn a couple nights a week, and then I was working at Republic a couple nights a week. Um, and it's really hard when you're working 6 nights a week at Brooklyn and Republic, or at a nightclub. I remember when I was talking about how after most shifts at Brooklyn, we would stay until 6 or 7 in the morning, just getting blackout wasted. So doing that, plus now working at another nightclub and doing the same thing, it was 5 or 6 nights a week. I was getting literally blackout till 7 in the morning, going home, sleeping until 2 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon, ordering fast food, laying on my couch until I had to go to work at 10 again, maybe having a couple drinks beforehand, and then going to work again. And when you get in that rhythm of um, drinking hard alcohol like that every day, Um, it's it was fun. There's no way about it saying it wasn't fun. It was really, really fun. Um, I was flying by the seat of my pants. I had more money than I knew what to do with. On average, working at between Brooklyn and Republic, you can make anywhere between like $300 and $600 or $700 a night, cash. Obviously, there were some slow nights, like where you made nothing, but in general, it was quite good. When I first started working between Brooklyn and Republic, it was insane. So when you have that much money and you have no responsibilities, you're not beholden to anybody. I was living in a city completely detached from my family, and I got into that cycle of like, I was literally being encouraged to drink, and all of the things I was doing in my life that I was like that were important to me revolved around drinking. And I think that's where my addiction really came from, was because like everything that I did was revolved around drinking, and people wanting me to drink and people wanting me to party and be that fun guy and do crazier and crazier stuff. And like it got to the point where I was when people found me like passed out, it was such a regular occurrence that it didn't even bother anybody. People just left me there when I was passed out, and like that's how normalized it had become, that I would overdrink to the point that I couldn't even stand up. I would just pass out anywhere. There's awful pictures that I have, and eventually at Brooklyn, it was so much fun. I learned so much about bartending there, despite it being drunk all the time. I learned how to blow fireballs, which was what I used to do when I was nightclub bartending there. So much fun. But I was actually sick one night at work with food poisoning, and there's a massive stabbing at the nightclub. Someone on the dance floor, I think I'm not sure who it was, but a guy pulled off the turban of somebody. And obviously, like, a turban is a very important garment. So he pulled it off, and the guy who had his turban pulled off pulled out a knife and started stabbing that guy who did it. And then the security came up and he started stabbing all of those people. It was insane. I wasn't there for any of it. And then he ran off. Obviously, that all got on the news, and that was sort of the downward spiral for Brooklyn, just because after an event like that, it's tough to bring people back into a nightclub. And so that's when I started working full time at Republic. I was there 5 or 6 nights a week, and it just got even worse from there. Hold on. I'll leave. As it's 10:04 right now, so that's some. As much as I want to keep talking, I think we'll leave the rest of the story, now that we're in sort of the Republic days, for tomorrow. But I'll leave on a. I'll sort of fast forward a little bit so you guys can see where the turning point was for me. And this didn't make me stop drinking, but it was something where I was like, okay, I have a bit of a